Good day, everybody. I hope that you're well, and I also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today, we'll be doing our grade 8 English lesson on vague pronoun references. And before we start, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. Once we've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, and then we're going to select the subject of English language arts, grade 8, and then we're going to scroll down up until we get to the chapter of vague pronoun references. All right. So when it comes to vague pronoun references, right? Well, before we start, we have our chapter is vague pronoun references. Our subject is English language arts, grade 8. And the lesson that we are going to be focusing on under the chapter of vague pronoun reference is to identify vague pronoun reference and to identify all of the possible antecedents. And that is going to be our lessons for today. All right, so when it comes to vague pronoun references, right? So when we write, so remember you guys are writing essays, writing paragraphs, writing stories, and so on, right? So when we write or when writing, you always need to make sure to avoid vague pronoun references, right? And what is basically a vague pronoun that we need to avoid? A vague pronoun reference, it occurs when a pronoun could refer to more than one possible antecedent. For example, if you remember a pronoun, it takes the place of a noun, right? So pronoun takes the place of a noun. So instead of saying the person's name, right, we will then, for example, say he, she, they, and so on, right? Them, these, and so on. So when you, for example, so when we when it comes to a vague pronoun reference, right, then it basically a vague pronoun reference, it will then occur when a pronoun could refer to more than one possible antecedent. And we are not going to find that basically, what do we mean by that, right? If we look at an example of a vague pronoun reference, then the example is, it says, when Lisa and Kim finally landed, she breathed a sigh of relief. So she. So now, if we look at that specific sentence, right? Both Lisa and she goes by the pronoun of she. So if they say when Lisa and Kim finally landed, right? She breathed a sigh of relief. So now the question is, who breathed a sigh of relief? Was it Lisa or was it Kim? Right? Which means that that is a vague pronoun reference because we don't know who specifically you are referring to. Are you referring to Lisa or are you referring to Kim? Because it could refer to any one of them. Because both Lisa as well as Kim are females. So they use the pronoun she. And when we, for example, say when Lisa and Kim finally landed, she breathed a sigh of relief, then it basically means that the sentence is unclear because we don't know who specifically the person is referring to. Right? But now, when a vague pronoun reference can be corrected, we can correct a vague pronoun reference in basically two ways. And the first way that we can correct a vague pronoun reference is to replace. So it is basically to replace the pronoun with its correct antecedent. That is if we want to correct it, right? And if we look at an example of how we can basically replace this vague pronoun reference, and then we can say, when Lisa and Kim finally arrived, Lisa breathed a sigh of relief. So now we know specifically who they are referring to. We are referring to, or they are referring to, Lisa. Or if we want to correct our pronoun reference, then we can also say, Lisa breathed a sigh of relief when she and Kim finally landed. So now it's basically just where we are kind of twisting that specific sentence by first identifying the person that is doing the action. So a vague pronoun reference, right? It can also occur when we use words like they or them or theirs or it or it's, and if we even use it without an antecedent. So if we use words like they, them, their, theirs, it or it's without you basically within a sentence, right? Then that is basically, and it's used without an antecedent, then it means that that is how we can basically show that that is a vague pronoun reference. Because now the question is, who is they? Who is them? That is also the specific questions that we need to ask ourselves when we basically write a specific sentence. And if we look at an example, it says, they say that this nail polish dries in less than 5 minutes. The question is, who is they? So that is a vague pronoun reference because Who is they? Unless you, for example, say the specific people who says that it dries in less than 5 minutes. But if you just say they, then they can basically refer to anyone. And that is why we would say that that is a vague pronoun reference. And when we specifically make mention of they, so the pronoun they is in use without an antecedent, without its antecedent. So, which means that this meaning of the sentence is unclear. Because who is they? That is the question that we need to ask ourselves. So, which means that this problem we can then fix by replacing the pronoun with the missing antecedent. And it says the advertisements say. So now this specific, so instead of saying they, we are specifying that the advertisement says that they, or say that this nail polish dries in less than 5 minutes. So who said so? The advertisements. All right. So these are basically just a few examples of vague pronoun references and how we can identify a vague pronoun reference. So if, for example, your sentence is unclear, then by all means that is a vague pronoun reference. If we don't know who you are talking about, then it is a vague pronoun reference. Your pronoun, right? Once or when you use a pronoun, your pronoun need to directly refer to a specific person or a specific thing that we can clearly say, okay, so this person is talking about that. But if, for example, we are unclear or your sentence is unclear, then that we call a vague pronoun reference. All right. So once again, we say that if we talk about vague pronoun references, when we are writing, whether you're writing a story, whether you're writing an essay, you need to make sure to avoid all the vague pronoun references within your essays or within your writing. Because a vague pronoun reference, it occurs when a pronoun could refer to more than one possible antecedent. And remember, a pronoun, it takes the place of a noun. So our pronouns can be he, it can be she, it can be it. Because if we also use the word they and it's not properly specified who the they are, then it means that that can also be a vague pronoun reference. But if we, for example, say Kim and we talk about Kim and Lisa, now we say they, then by all means we know that it is referring to both Kim and it is referring to Lisa. All right, so now we're going to aplusstudents.ca and there we're going to continue with our lesson on vague pronoun references. And we're going to identify the vague pronoun reference within our sentences. All right. So we said that when you're writing, then you need to make sure to avoid the vague pronoun references. And we said vague pronoun references. It occurs when a pronoun could refer to more than one possible antecedent. And we can actually correct a vague pronoun reference. So if we look at an example when it says, when Lisa and Kim finally landed, she breathed a sigh of relief. Remember, there we said that we need to basically ask ourselves, who is the she that we are talking about? And if we cannot properly identify who the she is, and it refers to and there's basically two or more people that we're talking about, then that means the sentence is unclear because we don't know who the person is talking about. All right. And we said that in order for us to correct our vague pronoun reference, we can replace the pronoun with its correct antecedent. For example, by saying, when Lisa and Kim finally landed, we can just say, Lisa breathed a sigh of relief, or we can say, Kim breathed a sigh of relief. It depends. So it basically depends on who or what you are referring to. Or we can also rewrite our sentence, right? So we either replace it or we rewrite our sentence by saying, Lisa breathed a sigh of relief when she and Kim landed. Now we are specifying who breathed a sigh of relief. All right. So now we're going to our test, right? Where we are going to, before we go to our test, it says, which of the following contains a vague pronoun reference? So we are now first going to identify which refers to a vague pronoun reference. It says, here we have a few options, right? It says, which of the following is a vague pronoun reference? It says, Mike, did you ask them if the flu vaccination is available yet? Okay, it only gives us that one. It only gives us that one, so which means that if we specifically look at that one, then we can already see that that sentence is a vague pronoun reference. And how we know it is a vague pronoun reference? Because it says, Mike, did you ask them? So now the question is, who is the them? If you need to ask yourself who is the them or who is, then it means that your sentence is unclear and that is a vague pronoun reference. All right, so the sentence is unclear, and the reason for the sentence being unclear because it says, Mike, did you ask them if the flu vaccination is available yet? Them. So now the question is, who is them? If you need to ask yourself who is them, right, then it means that your sentence is then unclear. Unless we specifically say, have you asked the doctors? Have you asked the nurses? Then it is more clear. But if you just say, have you asked them? Then it means that it is a vague pronoun reference because it is not clear as to who we are talking about. All right. If we look at the next one, it says we need to say which of the following contains a vague pronoun reference. It basically only gives us one. When Jake tackled Tim during the football game, his arm was injured. They're saying when Jake tackled Tim, his arm was injured. So now the question is, whose arm was injured? Because remember, both Jake and Tim, we basically can say we refer to them as a he. So it says when Jake tackled Tim during the football game, his arm was injured. So now, as much as James tackled Tim, but now maybe James's arm got sore because of the tackling, or Tim's is maybe sore because of how rough James tackled him. We never know. All right. So that is a vague pronoun reference. Let's look at the last one and then we're going on to our test. It says they say that diesel cars have better fuel economy than cars powered by gasoline. So now the question is, who is the they? Who are they that we are talking about? All right. So they say that diesel cars have better fuel economy than power by gasoline. So now you ask yourself, who is the they that they are talking about? All right. And the other say, yeah, okay, we spoke about that one. So now let's go to our test because remember we said they were by the gasoline one. Is this the final test for this specific chapter? It is quite easy, especially if you understand the concept of vague pronoun references. All right, so now we're going to identify the vague pronoun references. All right, so we need to say which of the following is a vague pronoun reference. It says they say that that diesel cars have better fuel economy than cars powered by gasoline, or option two that says experts say that diesel cars have better fuel economy than cars powered by gasoline. We need to say, or we need to identify the sentence that contains a vague pronoun reference. Option one or option two. All right. So the next one says, not even the next one, sorry, the first, if we choose the correct one, we would say that the vague pronoun reference is option one, right? Because we don't know who they are talking about, right? At least in the second option, they're saying that experts say. All right, which of the following is a vague pronoun reference? It says, when Jake tackled Tim during the football game, his arm was injured, which is option one. Or we have option two, when Jake tackled Tim during the football game, Tim's arm was injured. We need to select the vague pronoun reference. Or do we say when Jake tackled Tim during the football, Tim's arm was injured? So option one or option two. And if we were to select or choose the vague pronoun reference, I think you're just gonna have to go to the next one after the vague pronoun reference. So you just go down the line and you go to the next one after the vague pronoun reference within basically on the A plus students portal. All right, and if we were to choose the vague pronoun reference, if we say, when Jake tackled Tim during the football game, his arm injured. Because now we don't know whose arm injured. Was it Jake's arm that was injured during the tackle or Tim's arm? So that is a vague pronoun reference. It is unclear. All right, and if it says the protesters want them to raise salaries and increase employment benefits, right? That is option one. Or we have option two. And option two says the protesters want the company's executive to raise salaries and increase employment benefits. And if we were to select our vague pronoun reference, then we can say the protesters want them to raise their salaries and increase employment benefits. So, as much as we have the word the protesters, because now it specifies. And if we were to select the vague pronoun reference, we will choose option one. It's the them in there. All right. It says after Mr. Ellison finished performing, oh sorry, with Mr. Watson, Maria went up to thank him. Or option two, which is after Mr. Ellison finished performing with Mr. Watson, Maria went up and thanked Mr. Ellison. Or is it option two, which is after Mr. Ellison finished performing With Mr. Watson, Maria went up and thanked Mr. Elliot. See, so now she's specifying as in who she's going to greet. All right. And if we were to choose the correct vague pronoun, remember we said a vague pronoun reference, it basically means that, the pronoun or a word that is in there makes a sentence to be unclear. Actually, yeah, it makes a sentence to be unclear. All right, so we need to say which is a vague pronoun reference. And we said option one is a vague pronoun reference. All right. The next one says the airline lost Lisa's baggage when she flew to Hawaii with her sister last month. Or do we say the airline lost Lisa's baggage when she flew to Hawaii last month? We need to choose the correct option to show the vague pronoun reference. Option one, the airline lost Lisa's baggage when she flew to Hawaii with her sister last month. Or do we say option two, the airline lost Lisa's bag when she flew to Hawaii last month? All right, and if we select the correct vague pronoun reference, all right, and if we were to select the vague pronoun reference, remember we said a vague pronoun reference, it is where something is not clear at all, right? It's like your maybe the sentence or something is there, but it is not clear at all. And we said when it comes to a vague pronoun reference, then it means that if we have a vague pronoun reference and then we it means that the sentence is still unclear. And there's two ways in which you can connect it. So we need to select the vague pronoun reference. Is it option one or option two? And we chose option one. All right, let's do the last one. It says which contains a vague pronoun reference. Mike, did you ask them if the flu vaccination is available yet? Or option two, did you ask the nurses if the flu vaccination is available yet? All right, so if we were to choose the correct one, we will say the vague pronoun reference is the first one because yes, is did you ask them? Who is them? Them can be anyone. Well, all right, that is now the end of our lesson, grade 8. Thank you very much for joining the class. Remember, if you've completed this and you already did the final one, we can just go on to the next chapter or lessons. All right. But that is the end of our lesson on vague pronoun references. Thank you very much for joining the class. You must have a good evening further. Goodbye. All right. So that is now the end of our lesson. Have a good evening. Goodbye.